major change that we made to the volunteer software is that we have changed the way that communities work in the volunteer software. For any of you who have experience in the community information software, it now works much more like how areas served works in the community information software. That means that the software recognizes when a small neighborhood is inside a larger community. It also means that you have the flexibility to add any community you want when you're updating records. You're no longer confined to only the community in your search list. So that means that the Volunteer Center in Halton can post an opportunity that also has positions in Hamilton and list that that opportunity also has positions available in Hamilton. That's the major change. This is specifically intended to be helpful to those who have multiple communities in a single database where each group might want to show different communities, but they still may want to share records amongst each other and not have to have really gigantic lists of communities, 20 or 30 communities long, just because they want to be able to share these records between each other or create a big view that has records from all these different communities. So I'm going to go to search step 1 so we can get a quick look at what the new volunteer search community page looks like. One of the first things you'll notice is that it's now broken down into sections. If you have community groups that have more than one community in that group, it will now list the group first, and you can select that, that group, and it will automatically search all the communities in that group. If the group only has one community in it, it will just show the name of the group and not list it twice. So for those of you who've set it up with one group per community because you have very few communities, you'll not end up having double listings, which obviously would not look very good. You'll only have the single listing, one for each. Any questions about that, how that first page has changed? Okay. So again, you have the option of picking either the group or any of the communities in that group or any combination thereof. And it would automatically search all the ones inside. So if I pick Hamilton, etc., it searches Ancaster, Dundas, and the City of Hamilton. In this case, the City of Hamilton obviously also contains Ancaster and Dundas. Okay, rest is the same. Okay, so you'll see that when I pick the group, which is Hamilton, etc., by the time I get to the search page, it's broken it down into all the communities that are inside that group. And the groupings will obviously work exactly the same. Now, one of the interesting things to note here is, I'm going to go back to the main search page. So in this case, you'll notice that one of my communities is Hamilton City of, but nowhere here do I have listed Flamborough or Stony Creek or any of the other neighborhoods that make up the City of Hamilton. If I had a record that had listed Flamborough or Stony Creek as one of the areas, it would automatically find it, even though I'm not explicitly picking one of those records. So I'll give an example about how that would work just by quickly adding a new record, and we can take a look at the update form. So I'll go to the new community area. This is the same as it always has been. Your communities are determined by whatever you do in your volunteer community setup. That's what defaults to your form, as always. But you'll notice two changes. One, the Anywhere box is gone. Any of your existing records that had something in the Anywhere box will now have a community of Not Limited, which I recommend you update, but you don't have to update. And you have the option of putting any valid community name into these two extra boxes here. So in my case, I'm going to pick Stony Creek, which actually, before I do that, I'm going to make sure that let me do local. I'm going to do Community Finder here. Yeah, okay, so I do have just plain Stony Creek. I'm going to say that there are 4 And I'm just going to give this a position title and a record number so that this can actually link to something. I'll submit this page. So now in the record details, you'll see number of positions, Stony Creek 4. Again, even though Stony Creek was not one of my pre-configured communities. And oh, and of course I didn't add any general areas of interest. It's so bad. Try that again. So Hamilton, City of, and I'll pick a few things here. Make sure I get my opportunity. Okay, and here's my opportunity in Stony Creek. So even though I'm searching Hamilton City of and not Stony Creek explicitly, it understands that Stony Creek belongs in the city of Hamilton and therefore will bring it up in a search. Are there any questions about that change? For many of you, if you are happy with your community setup as it is, you will not have to make any changes whatsoever. Some of the larger databases like Central East who have been struggling with their community setup may want to take the opportunity now to review how they're managing their communities. But for most of you, if everything was already working fine, there's no reason why you have to change it. The one thing you may want to do is in records where you had selected every single community in order to, or in many communities in order to make it come up in searches, you might be able to capture that in one single name instead. So instead of listing Ancaster, Dundas, Flamborough, etc., if I can just say City of Hamilton, that's obviously an easier and more accurate way to capture it in the record. But all your records that you have now will exist or will continue to work just as they did before, so you don't have to make any changes. You can make changes if you want to, but you do not have to make any changes. Okay, there are minor changes to the community setup area, but if you were familiar with how the community setup worked before, you should be completely comfortable with how it works now. All we've really done is removed one aspect of the setup that's no longer necessary. Other than that, the setup works just as it always has. So there really isn't anything new to teach you about how the volunteer community setup works. You just no longer have to have a master list of volunteer communities like you used to have, because the master list is the entire communities table. You now have access to all of those communities, if you're in Ontario particularly, all of the communities in Ontario that are listed. Thousands of them without actually having to enter them or set them up in any way. They're just there available for you to use in any of your records at any time. Okay, so now on to some of the more substantial features. For the volunteer members that are on the line, that is the major change to your software. So there isn't anything else critical you need to stay on the line for. If you'd like to stay one more minute and find out how our keyword searching changed, you're welcome to do that. Oh, someone's unmuted here.
What is it telling you?
Mom, you're unmuted, and I don't think you mean to be. Sorry, Laura and Leslie and I all logged in with the same login, so we've ended up all on the same unmuted account here. All right. So I'll proceed now to talk a little bit about one of the simpler features that does apply to both parts of the software, and I'll go to demonstrate this. I'm going to use the taxonomy because it is one of the better places to see the results of how the keyword searching has changed. So what we've added to our keyword searching is the ability to search word forms. And I'll give an example right now using I'll use service. Okay, so what has changed? If you'll notice, I searched service, however, I brought up all of these words with services, the plural. Okay? Likewise, if I search services, see if I can find one that has just service in it. I might not be able to. I'll do children. So you'll see searching child that it brought up both child and children. And likewise, if I search children, it's going to bring up child and not just children. So this works both in English and in French. And it's not perfect, so don't expect it to find every word form, but it does automatically find many different word forms in terms of plural or tense. So that would mean different tenses of a verb or different forms of nouns, adjectives. It will find those forms. It is language specific, and as I say, it is not perfect. So don't have unrealistic expectations about what this can do. It's going to make a very significant difference to the quality of your results, but it can't catch everything. And of course, it's not a thesaurus. It doesn't find, if I search auto, it's not going to find car. But if I search car, it will find cars. So how is this different from some of the other techniques that end up being used, like, say, putting an S on the end? Well, if I was searching child and someone put an S on the end, I would end up getting nothing, no children, no nothing. So it's not very useful. Likewise, if let's say I'm doing a search for cat, one of the techniques that's often used is to do cat with a star on the end if you wanted to find cats, like pet cats here at the bottom. Now the problem is if I put a star on the end, I'm going to get things that are completely unrelated, like catering and cathedrals and catheter care. Whereas with the smart searching, it's going to understand that cats with a plural is the same as cats as a singular. Okay, so it's much better. If you want to be specific, meaning I do not want the plural, you have that option at any time by putting quotation marks around the word. It will no longer find the word forms, okay? So you do not have to search word forms. It is the default. At any time, if you put quotation marks around your word or phrase, it will not search the word forms. Okay, are there any questions about how this new search, keyword search, works? Looking for hands or questions. Oh, here we go. Can you show us how to, oh, sorry, Jennifer, I missed your question. Can you show us how to set this up? Did you mean the volunteer community? Okay. What is it specifically that you wanted to set up? Because it should look like that right now with whatever you already had set up. It should already be working. If you're not upgraded yet, we actually had a problem with your data. That's why we stopped at you. You were the last one we tried last night, and we actually are probably going to talk to you today about some data problems we had. So you'll see this immediately as soon as you're upgraded. You won't have to do anything. It's automatically going to be there for you. And we'll have automatically converted all your existing settings and data to make sure that it all works exactly the way that it does now. So any of your searches, the way they worked before, they're going to work now. Okay, so if there's no more questions about how keyword searching works, I'll move on to the next thing. All right, one of the simplest changes that we made is what we call our action drop-down, and anyone who's signed in today already has seen this, no doubt. It's kind of hard to not notice this change because if you didn't see it, as Ross had this experience during the testing, if you don't see it, then you will not be able to do anything. We've converted all of the non-logged in actions, so that means that any action that can only be taken by a user who is logged into the database into this action drop-down. It's been reorganized to make it easier to see which options are available. So they're in 4 categories: data management, classification, requesting an update, and volunteer. And again, you would only see what is relevant to you depending on your permission. One of the problems we had with this morning is that the drop-down was showing blank if you were logged in but didn't have access to any of these features, and that has been corrected now. It's as simple as clicking on whatever it is you want to do. So if I want to update a record, I just click on Update Record, and it's going to load that page. Okay, so that's the major change. We've been intending to do this for years, and just because of the number of things I had to modify and add to the drop-down, it was the right time to finally put this feature in. So that's why we got it. Any questions about how that drop-down works? Again, it's separated by, we continue to have this menu at the top for publicly available features. This drop-down is only for staff. This change has not been made in the volunteer software because the volunteer software does not have so many menu items. It just wasn't necessary at this time to give it to them. Someone asked if we're done with volunteer. We are really, for the most part, done with volunteer. Some of the setup areas, particularly the checklists for volunteer, have been converted over just like the community information to be multilingual, but really there's no significant change to the volunteer at this point. So anyone who only uses the volunteer software can feel free to go. There's really nothing that is of any significance to the volunteer software from this point on, but there is a lot of significance to community information software. So. I can't see any of these features. Oh, I can't see any of these features from Volunteer Halton. Are you talking about the drop-down, or which change specifically were you wondering, or were you not able to see? The communities, or? Sorry, oh, the keyword search. There's only one keyword search in the volunteer software. I'll go to the main menu, and that's right here. And it'll do the same kind of word form searching that we saw in the community information software, meaning it will search word forms. If you searched cat, it would find cats. If you search service, it will find services. If you search services, it will find service, and so on. It's just, I use the community information software to demonstrate, because the taxonomy search in particular is a really good place to see how the results work. Okay. I'm going to move on to changes. These are all CIC specific changes at this point. I'm going to move on to changes in how copying records work, how languages of records work, some of the really major structural changes that we've made. And I'll begin with a bit of a briefing about what this software upgrade was about. The major change in this software upgrade is we've restructured all of the what we call the base tables, all of the basic tables and checklist tables in the community information software, and much of the connected data, including the thesaurus and publication system, in order to make them fully operable in pretty much any language. Right now the software does still only work in French and English, but the underlying structure has been changed to be language independent to assist us in properly offering services in French. That was the primary goal, so that anyone can now create views that are only French. They can have views that default to French. They can create French-only records, all of those things that were really lacking. All of the data management features are available as much in French or potentially in the future any other language as they are available in English, meaning all of the data management processes that would be used for the English record can be used independently for a French copy of the record as well. So this was a massive structural change, so the underlying tables and database have been completely, massively restructured. I don't know how else to put it, massively restructured in order to accommodate this. Again, with the goal that not only now are we able to hopefully provide better French language support, but hopefully in the future it may be possible for you to have some special collections that are available in other languages as well. Although we can't do it immediately, all of the infrastructure is there in the future if you need to have pretty much any left-to-right language. We can't do top-to-bottom languages or bottom-to-top languages or right-to-left languages because SQL Server can't deal with those. But any language that SQL Server natively works with, we can potentially have as a language of record in the database now. In terms of completion throughout the software, we were able to complete all of the core record information. About half of the checklist and classification, all of the checklists, about half of the classification systems have been converted over. So quite major progress. We do still need to continue this process to allow particularly the volunteer software to also have all of these features. However, for someone working in the community information software, they now have the option of working almost exclusively in French, if that's what they want, and they no longer have to have English copies of records and no longer have to have English views to work in CIOC. Any questions about that basic change? Will these, okay, Mark asks, will these structural changes in the table under the hood impact offline access tools using daily downloads or exports? Your daily downloads, in terms of the core base tables that you get, are going to be the new base tables. You won't have them yet. You probably won't have them until at least tomorrow because there do need to be some changes made to make those downloads work properly. So if you were using the core base tables, you're going to have to make modifications to whatever was using that. In terms of the basic export formats that we offer and the XML export table that occurs in your download, those are, in general, unchanged. So you should, if that's what you were using, which is what, for the most part, what we recommend that you use if you need to use your data offline, there is no significant impact. We've made every effort to keep them as stable as possible. We've also made every effort to keep the sharing format as stable as possible. So there are only minor changes to the even the sharing format in order to accommodate what we've done. Does that answer your question, Mark? So yes, major change. If you get your daily download now, it probably has somewhere around 50 more tables in it than it used to. So pretty big change. We're now up to, I think, somewhere around 200 tables. Let me take a look and see if I can find. We're now up to 240 tables in CIOC. So that is a significant increase over the past. Some of the tables are gone, so we've not just added tables, we have removed tables. There's no more equivalent tables, those are gone. For those that actually care about the table structure changes, I'll just take 2 minutes and explain fundamentally what's changed. Whereas before we had a base table and a base table equivalent, now we have a base table and a base table description. The base table holds all shared information that is common to all language versions of the record. That would include drop-downs. That's about it. There's not much in them. Mainly they'll contain drop-downs, certain shared values, like in this case, the license capacities, so integers, numbers like min age, max age, that are going to be the same no matter what language you're looking in. Latitude, longitude, anything that has no text or language associated with it is going to continue to be in the core base table. The description tables have everything that's language specific. So any kind of text of any kind is going to be in the description tables. One thing really important to note, and I'm going to go down to the global base table, and pardon me for anyone non-technical, you can just ignore this part. Please be aware that there is a separate update date, updated by, update schedule, update history, import date, deletion date, non-public. All of those core fields that used to be shared between languages are not anymore. Each language of record has its own data management fields, its own complete set of data management fields, when it was collected, when it was modified, non-public status, deleted status. All of that is individual for each language of record. What that means is you can now mark deleted just one part of the record. So I can say the French is marked deleted without having to permanently delete it like you had to in the past. And it would then hide that from a view that didn't show deleted records. It would continue to show the English one, which wasn't marked deleted, but it would hide the French part that was marked deleted. And the same with non-public. If I said that the English record is non-public, but the French is public, then in a view that doesn't show non-public records, it's going to hide that non-public English portion of the record, but show the public French part of the record. All right? And they each have their own update schedule and their own update history. So if you update the English record today, but the translator can't come and update the French record for another month, that's reflected in the update date that they're not happening at the same time. Are there any questions about that? I have done my best to update the SQL help. It was a brutal task, and it hasn't all been tested. So if anyone does run into anywhere that they need more information or something isn't working, please let me know and I'll fix it right away. Obviously, with this many major changes, it was a huge amount of work to go in and redo that, and I didn't have time to test all of the changes that I made to the SQL help. So if you try and run one and it doesn't work, just let me know. Okay. All right. So if there's no more questions about the table structure, then I'll shut this down and get back to the actual software. As part of this, obviously, that we've changed a lot about how the record updating process works, since both languages of record can potentially be on their own update schedule and have all of their own data management information, all their own ability to be deleted, or have many different operations on them. So that's changed how the update process works, also how the copy record process works, and how the create equivalent process works, meaning creating a record in another language. So there's a little demonstration about how that works. When you pick Update Records from your menu, it's going to send you to the update form of whatever language you're working in. So if I was, this is not a French record, of course, very helpful. Here, this one has a French record. So if I flip over to French and I update this record, it's going to take me directly to the update form for French. Likewise, if I start in English, it's going to take me directly to the update form for the English portion of the record. Okay. One of the new features you'll notice is this part at the top, past changes to this record. Past changes to this record shows you all of the times that any kind of changes, any kind that is on this update form was made to this record. If I click on it, it's going to show me every field that was changed on that date. In this case, it was done through an import, and all of these fields were changed through the import. One of the things important to understand about change history is the first time you update a record, since you have no previous change history, it's going to think you changed everything. It's only on subsequent times that it's really going to recognize what you truly changed. So don't be alarmed if the first time you submit the update form, it says that you changed absolutely everything. It's because it has nothing to compare it to say, you know, what did you change versus what you didn't change. Because part of how change history works is it compares whatever you submit to whatever the current value is or the last known value of that record is. And if those two are different, then it knows you've made a change, and it records that change history. A little bit more about what change history looks like. I'll scroll down to one of these, see if I can find something good. No, I don't. There we go. I'll change something so we can see how this works. I'll change this to Alt-Org 13 and Alt-Org 23. There we go. So I've made some changes to alternate name. I'll submit my changes. I don't know why it's taking so long. There we go. So instead of going right to the French update form, it's providing me a link, and it's my option whether or not I want to proceed and update in that other language or not. In this case, I'm just going to go right back to my update form in English. And you'll see that it now has the 10th of December at 2:36. Help desk modified this record. If I go down to alternate name and compare it with the previous record, you can see it's going to highlight that I added the 3 to these two and the word again at the end of testing. If I compare in the other direction, so here I'm comparing what it was like on the 23rd of November to what it's like now, and it's going to look like I removed the 3 and the word again because it's reversed. Okay, so it shows you what exactly that change was. What parts of that field were added or removed. Are there any questions about how change history works? At the moment, each field will keep a maximum of 5 changes. So it's not to do with how long ago it was changed or anything else. There are 5 instances of changes kept for each field for each record. So the last 5 changes made to alternate name would be kept. The last 5 changes made to org level 1 would be kept. So it could be that some fields that change frequently are only going to have a few months worth of changes, and some fields that almost never change could keep years and years worth of changes, potentially. This change history applies not just to the update form, but also to the taxonomy. So I can also view the history of the taxonomy. See if I have any. I don't have anything to compare it to, but if I update the taxonomy, it will work exactly the same way. So it would show me any terms added or removed. Yeah. That's change history. A little bit about, I'm going to show delete for one moment here. I'm going to, oh no, I'll add a language version to something that doesn't have a French language. That one does. There we go. So whatever language you're in, you can create a record in an equivalent language. So if I had an English-only record, I can create French. If I have a French-only record, I can create an English language equivalent. As soon as I click this button, I'm going to create an exact duplicate copy of the English record as an initial entry for the French record. The new French record that I create is going to be a non-public record. Okay? So it will have automatically filled in, except for the data management fields like the update date, the updated by, created date, all of that will not have been filled in, but with the old information, because I'm going to have my own new update information, but all of the rest of the English information is going to be copied exactly for me to create this new French record. So that's the process of creating an equivalent. So the major change here is it doesn't take you, instead of taking you immediately to a create form, when you click that button, create equivalent, it creates it immediately in that other language. So the second that you click on it, it's created, and then you can modify it by doing the proper translations. And one of the things you'll have to do in your process is when you're ready, change it from non-public status to public status. By default, all new copied records or records that are created as equivalents are automatically created non-public. The reason that this happens, and it happens just with copy too, which I'll show you as I create this copy record, the reason this happens is to allow us to copy fully bilingual records. If we set up a system where you copied, if you wanted to copy both languages of record, but I allowed you to edit the English version before it made a copy of the French, it wouldn't be able to make use of the changes that you had made to the data in the English record, and it wouldn't really know how to create the French part of the record, which is why up until now we never had a copy feature that allowed you to copy all the language versions of the record. You could only copy a record in English. You could not copy it in French. And the way this is accomplished is it automatically creates an entire complete copy of this record in whatever languages you choose. So I have the option to copy all the languages or just the English version. That's my option. And it will automatically, in the database, go through every single table and field that's applicable and make a complete copy of that record right at that moment. Okay? And then you are directed to the update form in order to make changes. Because we don't want this exact duplicate copy to become immediately available to the public, that's why we've chosen to make it non-public to begin with, to give you an opportunity to modify the record in whatever way you need to before you actually publish that record and make it public. One of the things that Ross noted today was that if you fail to provide a record number when you're creating this new record from a copy, it's automatically going to use the lowest unused number, which in this case is GU40. So if I hadn't clicked that and I hadn't provided another record number, when I hit create, it's automatically going to use the lowest unused number. All right, so you have the opportunity to change that number later. So if I didn't like GU40, I could, as soon as I get to the update form, which is the next page, I could change the number if I happen to have forgotten to enter in whatever record number I actually wanted. One of the other big features we were able to add by taking this new technique for copying is giving you the option to copy publications, headings, and taxonomy, which were never available before when copying a record. So if you want to copy the taxonomy or the publications and headings, you simply select that. By default, it's not selected, and it will automatically copy over all those details along with the rest of the record. Okay. Any questions about how the copy feature has changed? Okay. Nope, okay. So here after my copy, you'll see I've come to the update form. It will have automatically assigned that GU40 for me because I didn't pick anything different. So it will have just picked whatever the lowest was for my agency. And you'll notice my new record was created in both English and French because I chose to create all languages. And you'll also notice if I go to Update Service Categories, hopefully it has copied. No, it didn't. Why not? Well, there's something to look into. It should have copied my taxonomy terms. I'll have to find out why. Did I hit no or yes? Let me look back and see what I did. I did. So I'm going to have to look at why it didn't copy the taxonomy terms. Because it should have. Okay, so that's the major change to the data management process. Does anyone have any questions about how any of that update process change works or any concerns? Okay, so that covers all of the major features for this upgrade. A lot of it was just infrastructure and database changes, so although it was a tremendous amount of work, visibly, it hasn't changed all that much in how you work. Some of the setup areas have changed in that they're written in a new platform, and they do allow you to do things like in the views you can add and remove languages from the view, which you weren't able to do before. But the fundamental way that they work really has not changed significantly. You can see you can delete a language from any view, and if you didn't have a view available in a language, you could add it. So if this was a French-only view, I could choose to add English instead. But most of even though these are now written in a different programming language, they work for the most part the same as they always have. So they should look generally the way they always have and operate generally the way they always have. The difference is anywhere where you used to have to provide an English value, you don't have to anymore. I'll give an example here with my extra checklist. So in the past, I would always have to provide an English value, and I could optionally provide a French value, and if I didn't, it would just use the English value. But now I can have an only French value. Okay, and you'll notice the little red box. That is alerting me that if I do not provide a value, and I select this for my record on my update form, it's only going to show this checklist in French. So if I'm viewing this record a record in English that has the only French checklist associated with it, it's not going to show only French when I'm viewing this record in English unless I provide a value in English. All right? For the purpose of the upgrade, your English values were automatically added to your French values if you didn't have one, so that the behavior of the software would stay the same between the last version and this version. But from now on, you make a choice for any one of these values you add, whether that be in the thesaurus or the checklist, any of those things. If you don't provide a value in that language, there's only a couple of exceptions I'll talk about. It will only be available in that language. So I can have French-only checklist items. I can have English-only. And have it not show up on the French at all. So if I had an English-only item, and I added this English-only to my record, it's only going to show up in English records. If I viewed the French version of that record, it would not say English-only. It wouldn't say anything at all. So these are truly language-specific. If I don't provide a value in both languages, it's not going to show up. There are exceptions to this, and the exceptions are communities table. You do not have to provide a value in every language. If you provide it in one language, it will automatically use it for every language unless you provide a translation. So if I provided a community name just in French, it would automatically use it on the English copy. It would just use the French name if I didn't provide an English name. The languages checklist also automatically uses whatever value is available. So if I didn't provide a French value, it would just use the English value. And schools, if you use the child care software, if you provide the name of the school in only one language, you do not have to provide it in every language. It will automatically use whatever is available. So if there was no French version available, it would automatically use the English language version instead. Okay, so those are the exceptions: communities, languages, and schools. All right, but the red box should be your alert to tell you that we're strongly recommending that you should be providing that value in the other language. So that, look for that as your alert to tell you that unless you really intend it to be just for that language, you should be filling that in. Any questions about how that, I have a question. Oh, someone asked about where you post future suggestions for enhancements, and that is our Enhancements Database, which is feature.cioc.info. It is linked from our community site as well if you click the little Features tab. So features.cioc.info, you do need to have an account to submit new features, but please go ahead and post whatever you like. Can't guarantee that everything will be prioritized as you'd like, but I do try to get estimates in within a couple of weeks of the submission. And there's a question from Jennifer about street type. Very good question, Jennifer. We have changed the way street type works, but it's a bit different from others. So let's go into the new street type management system here. This has changed too, but you'll see it's mostly like we saw before. Here is the major difference, the display after street and the drop-down. In the past, it would have the name of the street type and a little checkbox that said French. And if you checked French, it would automatically display it before the name. So if it was Rue Champlain, if Rue was French, it would automatically put it in front just by designating it as French. But since the structural changes we've made are intended to be more generous with other languages potentially in the future, having a little French checkbox was really not helpful. The other problem with that is there were certain cases where the French street type had to be at the end. These were very rare exceptions, and it was definitely a major challenge to figure out how we were going to deal with these exceptions. So here's how we deal with these exceptions. Let's say I have, you'll see I have two cases of the French street type avenue, one with before the name and one with after the name. That means I'll have two values in my drop-down list for street type, one that says before the name and one that says after the name, and I can make the choice when I'm updating the record about whether it's before the name or after the name. So that if you do have those strange cases where it goes against the normal rules for the street type, that you can create a new street type value that flops and has it on the other side and still be able to enter the data properly. So whatever language your record is, it's going to show that language's street types first in the list. So if I was working on a French record, then the French street types would appear first in the list and then the English, and vice versa. Any questions, more questions about street type? I mentioned this on the bulletin board, but I have added a lot of new values to my list of street types, which includes every value any of you had in your database and some more I found on Wikipedia. So I had been intending to try and update people's lists from my list sometime in the next few weeks, just to give you a more complete list to be working with and make sure that everyone has consistent values. Okay, any other questions about checklists or those setup areas? Okay. So many of these setup areas, you will notice .mvc, these have been converted to a new platform, which being brand new, we've had to do all of the basic CIOC infrastructure we've had to rewrite from scratch. So this obviously is going to be a little bit more prone to problems because it is brand new. So we will be keeping a very close eye out for errors or issues, and do report to us if you have any problems. This new platform right now only exists in the setup area of the software and update publications, so within a record. Those are the only areas that have been converted to this new software platform. The rest are in the same traditional software platform that we have always used. So partly because we didn't want to have to deal with passing information around about searches to the other pages. So we specifically stayed out of converting any of the search pages at this time. I'm going to go into Update Publications here for a moment. And you can see that this too, .mvc. Okay, so anything that you see that has .mvc in the name of the page, that has been converted over to a new software platform. So it runs on a different, it's a different software language than the rest of our software does. Okay, and again, it's because all the infrastructure, all the underlying code has all been rewritten from scratch. There's a lot of room for things to have not gone right. It's a totally different programming language, totally different system administration. So lots of new challenges with that, and we don't expect that there won't be any hiccups. We definitely think there will be and are ready to deal with them when they come. One of the casualties of the change to MVC is I have to go in and redo all of the links to page help. So that's why there was a post on the bulletin board warning you that the page help needed to be updated, not necessarily because the functionality of the page has changed in some cases, but because the page help links are actually not going to work. Like in this case, there's no page link here because the address of the page has changed, and we have to come up with a new way of linking to page help for these MVC pages. So that is coming. The page help hasn't been lost. We just have to find a new way to link to it because the structure of the links has changed. Okay. All right, that's it. Unless anyone has any general questions, that's pretty much it. I hope I've covered everything. We are upgrading everyone else tonight. We are keeping our closest watch on any issues. This is a huge, difficult upgrade, so we are expecting it. We're monitoring the errors. We will fix any problems that come up as quickly as we possibly can. But because about a third of the major parts of the software are now in a totally different language and written from scratch, it's not unexpected that there's going to be little hiccups here and there. Okay. All right. If there's no further questions, or if there are further questions and I didn't answer them here. Oh, sorry. I do have a question from John. So I will go. John wants to see how do we see the equivalent language when we're updating. Good question, John. I showed you this, but I didn't show you this. So you'll see in a minute what I mean. French in it. Okay, so I did, as I say, I sort of showed you this. When we looked at this revision history, all I have to do is switch to French. That's it. Now I can view the French revision history. So the one it brings up by default is going to be the current version, but I can also bring up all the past versions and compare it with what's changed. So if I'm a French translator coming in after the fact to work on this record in French, so let's say I'll go to the French version. I want to update this French version. And I want to know what has changed. So I can bring up my form. It'll give me all the dates of the change, tells me fees and alt name have changed, so I can scroll down to the alternate name and say, okay, well, what exactly changed? I'll bring up my pop-up. I'll switch to English. I'll compare it to the previous version and says, okay, so I've changed the name of this one, and this one, and I know exactly what I need to change if there's an equivalent in French. Does that answer your question okay, John? Great. So obviously that's a really, really big change because now you can see exactly what was changed in the other language, and you don't have to reread every little detail to figure out what applies. So hopefully that's going to be one of the best things that we've done to assist people who have to do translations, is the ability to see exactly what has changed over time. You'll notice me moving this window around. It's, unlike the pop-up window before, this one sticks. So it means that if I have to copy and paste information, it doesn't disappear like the other one did, which was a true pop-up window. This is a little window that I can move around the page. I can actually resize it if I want to make it bigger or smaller, and it'll stick wherever I leave it. Okay, and I can close it when I'm done with it. All right, if there are any other questions, concerns, issues, please post on the bulletin board. For actual software errors, in 99.9% of the cases, we will receive an error report, but that doesn't mean that it isn't helpful for you to tell us exactly what you were doing when that error occurred, because sometimes we can find out the line number and what the error was, but it's not enough for us to know what to do. The copy text. John is asking for the copy taxonomy and copy publications, what is the default? The default is not to copy, because in most cases when you're creating a new record, you have to reevaluate what the appropriate taxonomy terms and publications are. So the default is not to copy. You have to choose explicitly to copy. All right, we will keep on top of it and do our best to fix whatever comes up that's a bit glitchy, and at least if there's any issue, to know as soon as possible. In terms of public pages, because we do get the error reporting, hopefully that means no one has to be worrying that there are unreported errors in the public going on, because we will receive those errors even for the public. If they don't, obviously they don't report to us if there's a problem, but we do receive the error report by email. So we will know if there is a problem going on, even if the public aren't reporting it to us. So, and we will try and resolve those issues as soon as we possibly can. All right, I'm going to stop the broadcast now. And again, if you have any ongoing questions, please post them on the bulletin board, and I will address them as soon as I can. Thanks.